One of the internet's greatest gifts to nerds everywhere is the ability to slam our favorite fictional characters into each other like the action figures of our yesteryears. Whether it's on message boards, social media, or internet video series like Death Battle and Superpowered Beatdown. And one character who I have always wanted to see in one of these things is Starfire. And thanks to the YouTube channel Josh Scorcher, we're finally getting a fully animated versus video featuring Starfire versus Blaze the Cat from the Sonic universe. So shout out to the couple over at Josh Scorcher, who will be pitting these two characters against each other on April 26th. I'm going to be going over that fight in great detail after it debuts. But right now I just want to take some time to go over what the setup actually looks like and what we could likely expect during the fight. I'm just now discovering these guys, but they've been making some great content over at their channel. And from the looks of things in their Starfire preview video, their fiery fan fight series has the potential to be among the greatest to ever do this type of content. Regardless of who wins the fight, I can't wait to see who you guys pit against each other next. And I've got to give it to them. They managed to cram a lot of information about Starfire into a very short amount of time. That video is going to be linked in the description. But I'll be showing off a few segments here and there in my own video, if for no other reason than I have to show off just how dope this editing is. This is some of the best editing that I've ever seen anyone do when it comes to comic book character content. They even include a lot of lesser known tidbits about Starfire, including different ways that she uses her starbolts. And as a Starfire historian myself, I can tell you that almost everything they say checks out, and that is not easy. Not only has Starfire been around for many more years than Blaze, but there are a ton of different variations of Starfire, both in and out of the comics. So to take all of that and put it together, wrapped up in a bow in a video under 10 minutes long, bellissimo. However, as a Starfire historian, I gotta point out a couple things. I'm not trying to flex with the whole Starfire historian thing. It's less of a flex and more of a cry for help. First off, they mentioned in the video that Starfire has undergone a total of 16 years of torture. They don't lay that number out directly, but they do reference two different versions of her backstory.
Plus, he likely didn't know what they'd actually do to Kori, as she was tortured and especially abused by koriand'r and the Citadel for 6 years.
They used both sisters as guinea pigs for their experiments to see how much energy a Tamaranian can absorb before exploding into a pile of alien guts. This particular set of experiments went on for 10 years.
In her pre-Flashpoint era origin, she was taken captive by the Citadel after her father was forced to turn her over in order to save his people. Shout out to her defecting sister koriand'r, aka the worst sister of all time. She was then kept as a slave and given out to different masters by koriand'r before she and Blackfire were eventually captured by the Scions and forcibly experimented on. And you guys know where it goes from here. The Scions are attacked by the Gordanians, which causes the energy machine to go haywire and eventually explode, and all of this results in the sisters getting their starbolt powers. But then on one of the panels that they share, Starfire says that she was experimented on and tortured for 10 years. This is from the New 52 continuity. And in that specific continuity of the DC universe, various elements of Starfire's backstory are different, including how long she was held captive. I go over all the differences in her backstory between pre-Flashpoint and New 52 in another video that I did about how I would fix Starfire as a character in the comments, so definitely go check that one out after you finish this one. But these are two different versions of the same event. They're not all together happening at the same time. If they were, it would make her almost 30 years old when she arrived on Earth. But again, I'm not sure they meant to say that she went through both things at the same time. They may have just been referencing the fact that across the different versions of Starfire, she's just constantly being tortured for several years, which is why she's so tough in addition to her Tamaranian physiology. Then later on in the video, they repeat the line of koriand'r's name translating to Starfire in English, which to my knowledge is only a thing in TT03. The name koriand'r translates to optimisms of tomorrow in Tamaranian. But with all the fan sites and comic book news sites that report on these things without context, it's easy to read stuff like this and think that it's just the way things are in general, unless you're hyperfixated on a character like I am.
So to keep playing it, you gotta be a fucking nerd.
Okay. What about Blaze? Well, I'll be honest, I'm out of the Sonic loop. I loved the games as a kid, but in terms of the lore, I really haven't been following the development of the series. I'm more of a Genesis and Dreamcast era Sonic guy, and I never played Sonic Rivals, which is the game where Blaze was introduced. But the movies are fire. You can enjoy those regardless of what era of Sonic you're more familiar with. But I took this question to my friend Igika, who is an absolute Sonic stan, and she broke it down like this.
I think it could go either way, but I think based on Blaze being able to use the Soul Emeralds, that would give her an advantage over Star.
Iggy also told me a bit about Blaze's backstory, and it sounds like hers is almost as confusing as Starfire's, especially for an outsider. She was introduced as a princess from the Soul Dimension who guards the Soul Emeralds, but in Sonic 06, she comes from an apocalyptic future of Sonic's dimension along with Silver. At the end of that game, after the defeat of Iblis, she uses the emeralds to take herself to a different dimension, presumed to be the Soul Dimension. But we have no idea what happens between Sonic 06 and Rush. So depending on which is actually her true origin, she's either a warrior princess or a child from an oppressive apocalyptic future. Make it make sense. Fun fact, Igika actually did the thumbnail for the Starfire vs. Blaze video. She's also done channel art for your boy, and helped me behind the scenes with some of my concept art and coloring on my comic books. So shout out to you mad lass. Sonic the Hedgehog. It always comes down to rings and emeralds at one point or another. But according to the Versus Wiki, the Soul Emeralds that she's referring to apparently put Blaze at the low multiversal scale of power, with her baseline power scaling at high universal. Now this is the Versus Wiki, so take everything that you read here with a grain of salt. But if this is even close to accurate, Starfire is gonna be in for one of the biggest fights of her entire fictional life. When it comes to scaling Starfire, I've said it multiple times on this channel how hard that can be. Her feats aren't always clearly or consistently observable due to how she's often underutilized in the comics, paired with a very wide power disparity across different DC continuities and out-of-comic adaptations. Also the fact that what's said in the text isn't often adequately reflected with what we're actually seeing. In the New Teen Titans days, for example, Starfire was once described as having the strength of 8 men. But some of her earliest feats involve lifting large boulders and slabs of rock, cutting battle cruisers in half just by flying through them, carrying giant weapons the size of entire skyscrapers, and toppling enemies who stand several stories tall with single punches. Clearly that's a little bit stronger than 8 men. And this is made even worse with out-of-comic appearances like the live Titan show on Max, which clocked her energy output at being over that of 10,000 suns. So you can see how pinning down an approximate strength level for Starfire isn't exactly easy. Personally, I'd place Starfire at the high galactic tier with the potential to go low universal. Even in more modern comic books, her energy output is insane. And that was before she was made into a Herald of Darkseid, where she had enough power to destroy Orion, whose durability level is at the low multiversal level. But even with all that being the case, it's clear that in terms of raw power, Blaze clearly has an advantage. Now this does not mean that koriand'r is down and out. Remember, Starfire has a high resistance to extreme temperatures, and can actually siphon heat and ultraviolet energy from various different sources of energy, including fire and explosions. That nullifies a lot of what Blaze can actually do to Starfire. Not to the point where her powers are straight up useless though. She can also still do things like teleport, fly at faster than light speeds. Her striking power is apparently universal. What the fuck?
Wow! Okay!
Man, these Sonic characters just be doing stuff. Maybe she's actually one of Kori's ancestors from another timeline or something. I don't know. Blaze also has a fear of heights? Well, that would give her advantage if it weren't for the fact that she can still fly and survive in the vacuum of space like Kori. But ultimately, I don't think this is going to be as simple as who can blow up stuff the best or who can hit the hardest. So don't get too caught up in all the power scaling. We also have to factor things like combat experience, mental state, and even personality. For example, Blaze is only 14 in Sonic lore, versus Starfire, who's currently in her late 20s or early 30s. And even if we're going with a younger version of Starfire, she started training with the Warlords of Okara as a preteen. For the uninitiated, the Warlords of Okara are basically warrior monks who view combat and warfare like a religion. Training under them alone put Starfire on par with the Amazons, who are some of the best fighters in the DC universe, allowing her to regularly defeat Donna Troy in battle. Pair that with the decade plus of being a Titan, where she's fought the likes of the Titans of Greek myth and Raven's evil soul self, just to name a few heavy hitters. And I think Starfire's combat experience and skill could give her the edge needed to come out on top. We've seen numerous fights in similar series where characters are outclassed in terms of strength and durability, but make up for that with experience and skill. To be fair, we've also seen fights go the other way as well, where a more experienced fighter is beaten by someone who's just way too strong for them to handle. So we'll see how this fight goes, and win or lose, we will be here to cheer on the alien warrior hippie princess. I will be breaking it down sometime after the video's debut, so check back here a couple days after the fight so that we can hash it out. But until then, if you need more alien warrior hippie princess in your life, then click this video right here. And until next time, keep right on simping.